Silent night, holy night, all is calm. Stop. Hold on a second. December 25th, a cozy little stable, a grumpy innkeeper shaking his head. That's the version we see on every Christmas card, the one spun for a Hallmark movie. But let me tell you the real story. It's messier, way bolder, and once you truly grasp it, it's absolutely impossible to forget. So, stick around, because by the time this video wraps up, that sweet little manger scene on your mantelpiece, it's going to look nothing like the gritty, miraculous reality. We're about to peel back centuries of tradition. Alright, quick pop quiz. How many times does the Bible explicitly mention December 25th as Jesus' birthday? The answer is a resounding 0. Not once. The very first clue we get from the biblical narrative itself is the mention of shepherds keeping watch over their flocks by night. Now, in Judea, during the dead of winter, sheep aren't out grazing under frosty skies. They're typically huddled in caves or brought indoors for warmth and protection from the elements, pasturing them openly at night in December. That just doesn't happen. This alone hints that the traditional date is probably off. Beyond that, early Christians weren't exactly throwing birthday parties for anyone, let alone Jesus. Birthdays at the time were largely considered pagan celebrations, associated with emperors and deities. The idea of marking a birth date wasn't part of their spiritual practice. So, for the first few centuries, Jesus' birth wasn't celebrated on any specific day. It wasn't until the 3rd century that church leaders really started feuding over a date. Some scholars and theologians argued for May 20th, others for January 6th, and still others proposed various spring or fall dates. There was no consensus, just a lot of theological wrestling. Then, something interesting happens. Enter the Roman Emperor Aurelian. In 274 AD, he dedicates December 25th to the sun god Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. This was a huge popular pagan festival, marking the winter solstice, the shortest, darkest day of the year in the northern hemisphere, after which the sun's light begins to return. Fast forward about 50 years, and what do the church leaders in Rome decide? You know what? Fine. It was a brilliant, strategic move. Instead of fighting against a deeply ingrained pagan holiday, they co-opted it, offering a Christian alternative. It wasn't about historical accuracy, it was pure marketing genius. They wanted to replace the worship of the physical sun with the celebration of the Sun of Righteousness. So, while we celebrate on December 25th, most modern scholars now lean toward Jesus being born in late September or early October, fitting the agricultural cycles and pastoral practices described in Luke. And yes, the historical consensus places his birth somewhere between 7 and 4 BC. You heard that right. Christ was born before Christ. Why? Because a 6th century monk named Dionysius Exiguus, who was tasked with calculating the timeline for Easter, apparently flunked his math. He miscalculated the reign of Emperor Augustus and Herod the Great, shifting the timeline forward. So, our calendar is literally off by a few years. It just goes to show, even the most sacred dates have a surprisingly human and sometimes messy backstory. Luke's Gospel famously states that Caesar Augustus ordered all the world to be registered. It's a great sweeping line, right? Sets the stage for a grand imperial decree. But here's the rub. The Roman Empire was incredibly meticulous about its records. They were masters of bureaucracy, and yet no such universal census, one requiring everyone to return to their ancestral homes across the entire empire, ever shows up in any other Roman historical document. Not a single one. What we do know is that a governor named Quirinius did run a census of Judea, but that was in 06 AD, a full 10 years after Herod the Great, who plays a central role in Matthew's nativity narrative, had died. Awkward, right? This historical discrepancy has led to a lot of scholarly debate. Some suggest Luke might be conflating events, or that there was a different localized census that isn't widely recorded. Others argue that Quirinius might have had an earlier, less well-documented stint as governor, or that the census was a multi-stage process. Regardless, it's not the straightforward, empire-wide event we often imagine. So, if the census wasn't quite the universal, everyone-go-home event, Luke describes why the arduous road trip for Joseph and a heavily pregnant Mary. This brings us to another fascinating cultural detail: ancient Jewish ancestral property laws. If Joseph was indeed of Davidic descent, as both Matthew and Luke claim, his family would have held ancestral land in Bethlehem, the city of David. These laws were deeply ingrained, linking families to specific territories for generations. A census, even a local one, might have required individuals to register in the place of their family origin for tax or property purposes. Picture the first century bureaucracy. You're Joseph, a carpenter from Nazareth. You get a parchment decree. Maybe it's a regional census. Maybe it's tied to property. And it says you, being of the house and lineage of David, need to go to Bethlehem. That's a journey of roughly 150 kilometers, about 90 miles from Nazareth. For a pregnant fiancée Mary, that's not just an inconvenience. It's a grueling, weeks-long trek over hilly, dusty terrain, likely by donkey. It's not poetic tinsel. It's a bureaucratic slog, a testament to the inescapable demands of imperial rule. And it's this very slog that, by what Christians believe, was divine providence, that lands Jesus in the only town that Micah's prophecy specifically labels as the Messiah's birthplace, Bethlehem. The census, whether historically precise as a universal event or a localized registration, served a theological purpose, ensuring Jesus was born exactly where prophecy said he would be. This is one of the most iconic lines of the Christmas story. No room in the inn. It paints a picture of a heartless innkeeper turning away a desperate, pregnant couple. But let's dig into the original Greek word katalima. Now, katalima can mean a commercial inn, like a roadside motel, but more often, especially in the context of a small village like Bethlehem, it refers to an upper guest room within a private home, or simply a guest room. Interestingly, it's the very same word Jesus uses when he tells his disciples to find a katalima for the Last Supper, and they certainly weren't heading to a red roof inn for that. This distinction is crucial. First century Middle Eastern culture was built on an incredibly strong code of hospitality, especially for kin. Villagers would move heaven and earth to house family, even distant relatives, particularly those traveling for something as official as a census. To turn away a pregnant woman, a relative, would have been an unthinkable social transgression, a profound violation of cultural norms. So, what likely happened? Joseph, returning to his ancestral village, would have naturally sought out his extended family. Bethlehem was a tiny place, perhaps only a few hundred people. It would have been packed, overflowing with other relatives, also of David's line, who were likewise returning to register for the census. Joseph and Mary weren't turned away by a grumpy innkeeper. They arrived to find their family's guest room, the katalima already packed to the rafters with other relatives. Imagine arriving at Thanksgiving and finding all the spare bedrooms taken by cousins you didn't even know were coming. The typical first-century Palestinian home wasn't like our modern houses. It often consisted of a main living area where the family ate and slept, and sometimes a separate upper room for guests. Crucially, the main level of the house often included an area where prized animals, a donkey, a cow, a few sheep, were brought in at night for warmth, safety, and to keep them from being stolen. They weren't in a separate barn. They were often right there, separated by a low wall or simply sharing the same large space. The result, with the guest room full, Joseph and Mary were simply welcomed into the main living area of the family home, sharing space with the animals. When it came time for Mary to give birth, there was no separate, clean, quiet room. So, she lays the baby in the manger, the feeding trough for the animals, right there, in the heart of the bustling, crowded family home. The Holy Family isn't outcast. They're squeezed in with everyone else, experiencing the very real, messy, communal reality of first-century life. It's a powerful image of humility and solidarity, far removed from the sanitized, isolated stable of our Christmas pageants. Let's talk about that iconic Star of Bethlehem. Matthew uses the Greek word aster, which is a pretty general term. It doesn't necessarily mean a star like our sun. It could refer to any bright celestial object, a planet, a comet, even a meteor. And scholars have put forward some incredibly compelling scientific theories. One popular theory points to Chinese astronomers, who meticulously recorded a bright comet visible for about 70 days in 05 BC. Now, a comet would have been a truly awe-inspiring, unusual sight, something that would definitely grab the attention of ancient skywatchers. Another powerful argument centers on planetary conjunctions. Specifically, in 07 BC, Jupiter and Saturn met in a rare triple conjunction in the constellation Pisces. What's a conjunction? It's when two or more celestial bodies appear very close together in the night sky from Earth's perspective. A triple conjunction is when they appear to meet, set apart, and then meet again 3 times over several months. For Babylonian astrologers, who were incredibly skilled astronomers and deeply invested in celestial omens, this was a massive deal. Jupiter was often associated with kingship, Saturn with Judea, and Pisces with the Jewish people or the end times. Such an alignment would have been interpreted as a powerful sign concerning a king in Judea. It wasn't a single stationary star hovering over Bethlehem, but a series of astronomical events that would have signaled something profoundly significant to those who knew how to read the heavens. And who were these wise men or Magi? Forget the image of 3 kings on camels from your Christmas carols. The Magi were actually priests of Zoroastrian science, hailing from ancient Persia or Babylonia. They were the intellectual elite of their day, skilled in astronomy, astrology, dream interpretation, and ancient medicine. They were the astrologers-in-chief, or royal advisors, not just some random camel-riding tourists. Their journey wasn't a quick jaunt. Traveling 800 miles across deserts and mountains would have been an epic, months-long expedition fraught with peril. They brought diplomatic gifts, gold for kingship, frankincense for deity, and myrrh for death. These weren't just pretty presents. They were deeply symbolic and incredibly practical. The gold coins, for instance, likely funded the Holy Family's unexpected escape to Egypt, providing for their needs as refugees. Frankincense, a fragrant resin, was used in temple worship and associated with divinity. Myrrh, another aromatic resin, was used for embalming and anointing the dead, foreshadowing Jesus' ultimate purpose. Matthew, writing for a Jewish audience, wants you to see these gifts not just as offerings, but as prophetic declarations of Jesus' entire life trajectory, a king divine destined to die. Their arrival, likely months or even up to 2 years after Jesus' birth, also explains Herod's decree to kill all boys 2 years old and under in Bethlehem. He was hedging his bets based on the Magi's timeline. It's a story far richer and more complex than the simplified version we often hear. Herod the Great, the king mentioned in Matthew's account, was, by all historical measures, a truly monstrous figure. His paranoia was legendary, and it kept him in power. He executed 3 of his own sons, his favorite wife, Mariamne, her mother, and countless other perceived rivals and family members. He even had his brother-in-law drowned. Josephus, the first-century Jewish historian, who absolutely loved juicy tyrant tales, chronicled Herod's atrocities in great detail. He paints a picture of a man utterly consumed by insecurity and a willingness to eliminate anyone who threatened his throne. Yet, here's the puzzle. Josephus, who documented every major and minor act of Herod's brutality, never once mentions the massacre of infants in Bethlehem. This silence is significant and has led many scholars to question the historicity of the event as a large-scale slaughter. Let's consider Bethlehem itself. In the 1st century, it was a tiny, insignificant village. Archaeological estimates suggest its population was maybe 300 to 1,000 people at most. If we conservatively estimate the number of male children under 2 years old in such a small population, we're probably talking about a couple of dozen boys, perhaps around 20. In a region where Herod murdered hundreds for sport, where he massacred whole villages and executed priests and nobles, without a second thought, the killing of 20 or so infants in an obscure village could have gone unnoticed by a historian like Josephus, who was focused on larger political events and the fates of prominent individuals. It might not have even registered as a blip on the Roman radar. However, Matthew's point isn't necessarily about a precise body count or a historically verifiable event that would make headlines. His narrative is steeped in typology, a literary and theological technique where events in Jesus' life mirror events in Israel's past. For Matthew writing to a Jewish audience, the massacre of the innocents is a powerful echo of Pharaoh's decree to kill all male infant Israelites in Egypt, with Jesus cast as the new Moses escaping the tyrant's wrath. Just as Moses was saved to deliver his people, so too is Jesus. It's a theological statement, a bold claim about Jesus' identity and mission, framed within a familiar narrative pattern from Jewish scripture. Whether a literal historical event of mass slaughter or a powerful symbolic narrative, it underscores Herod's evil and Jesus' miraculous escape, setting the stage for his redemptive work. If you've ever tried to piece together a single seamless Christmas narrative from the Bible, you've probably noticed something. Matthew and Luke don't exactly mesh. They seem to tell two quite distinct stories, almost opposite in their focus and details. Matthew's account gives us the star, the mysterious Magi from the east, the flight to Egypt, and the terrifying decree of King Herod. It's a story steeped in intrigue, danger, and prophetic fulfillment. Luke, on the other hand, provides the angel choir, the humble shepherds, the crowded Katalima guest room, and the Roman census. His story is one of peace, humility, and universal announcement. Why this divergence? It's because they're not trying to write modern biographies. They're not aiming for journalistic, fact-checked reports. Instead, they are theological portraits. Carefully crafted narratives designed to answer different questions for different audiences. Matthew, writing primarily for a Jewish Christian audience, is laser-focused on one central question. Is Jesus the Davidic king? Is he the long-awaited Messiah who fulfills the prophecies of Israel? To answer this, he meticulously piles up prophecies. Jesus' birth in Bethlehem, Micah 5:2. The flight to Egypt, Hosea 11:1. The exile, the return. The lament for the slaughtered children, Jeremiah 31:15. He paints Jesus as the new Moses, the true heir to David's throne, the fulfillment of Israel's story. His narrative is deeply rooted in Jewish scripture and tradition, emphasizing Jesus' royal lineage and divine authority. Luke, conversely, is writing for a Gentile audience, likely addressing a Roman official named Theophilus. His central question is broader. Is Jesus the Savior of the world? Is this good news for everyone? He foregrounds the Roman Empire, the census that impacts all the world, the angels announcing peace on earth and goodwill to all. He emphasizes humility by having angels appear to low-status shepherds, not kings or priests. He highlights God's concern for the marginalized and the universal reach of Jesus' message. Neither evangelist is trying to give us a comprehensive chronological biography in the modern sense. They are ancient preachers, theological artists, constructing narratives to make a powerful claim about Jesus. When we try to harmonize them into one tidy chronological meganativity, we often create the quaint Christmas pageant we know and love, but we can lose sight of their individual, profound theological messages. Reading them side by side, understanding their distinct purposes, reveals not a contradiction, but a couple of ancient voices and brilliant minds. Making the same earth-shattering claim, God just crashed into human history, and it profoundly changed everything. It's a testament to the richness and depth of early Christian thought, showing how diverse perspectives could affirm a central truth. The manger. It's such a simple, humble detail, but it's loaded with profound symbolism, especially when we understand the context of first-century Israel. Mangers weren't typically made of soft wood or wicker baskets like we often imagine. In a land of limestone, they were often carved directly out of the rock, tough enough to withstand the heads of donkeys, cattle, and sheep. Placing the Messiah, the long-awaited King of Israel, in such a crude animal feeding trough flips every single expectation. Instead of palace security, we find divine vulnerability. Instead of a royal cradle, a feed bin. Instead of a grand priestly announcement in the temple, field-working shepherds. The lowest rung of society, often considered unclean and untrustworthy, get first dibs on the good news. This isn't just a quaint detail, it's a radical subversion of power and status. God chooses the lowest, most unexpected place to make his grand entrance, signaling that his kingdom operates by an entirely different set of rules. And that angelic line, peace on earth, goodwill to all people. It's not just a cozy sentiment for a Christmas card. In its first-century context, it's political satire, a direct challenge to the dominant ideology of the Roman Empire. Caesar Augustus, the very emperor who ordered the census, was heralded throughout the empire as bringing good news. The Greek word is euangelion, the same word for gospel of Pax Romana, Roman peace. But this peace wasn't gentle. It was peace enforced by legions, achieved through conquest, subjugation, and brutal military might. Caesar's heralds proclaimed his divinity and his peace through imperial power. Luke, writing his gospel, counters this imperial propaganda with a stunning reversal. He declares that the real peace, the true good news, just arrived. Not on a war horse, not from a conquering emperor in a marble palace, but swaddled in cloths, lying in a feed trough in an obscure village. It's a bold theological statement. The world's true hope for peace is unfound in human power or military might, but in the vulnerable incarnate presence of God Himself embodied in a baby born among animals. It's a revolutionary message, wrapped in the most unassuming package imaginable. The virgin birth is, without a doubt, one of the most astonishing and challenging claims of the Christmas story. To modern, scientifically minded ears, it sounds like a biological impossibility. But let's look at its origins. The prophet Isaiah, writing centuries before Jesus, speaks of a sign. Therefore, the Lord Himself will give you a sign. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and will call him Emmanuel. Here's where a crucial linguistic detail comes in. The original Hebrew word Isaiah uses is Alma, which means young woman or maiden. It doesn't explicitly mean virgin in the strict biological sense, though a young unmarried woman would typically have been a virgin in that culture. However, when the Hebrew scriptures were translated into Greek around the 3rd to 2nd century BC, in what's known as the Septuagint, the translators chose the Greek word parthenos, and parthenos does mean virgin in the unambiguous biological sense. Matthew, when he quotes Isaiah in his Gospel to explain Jesus' birth, uses this Greek Septuagint translation. So, for the early Christian community, the story of a biological virgin birth was firmly established. Modern ears, steeped in scientific understanding, immediately jump to the biological implications. How is this possible? But for ancient Jews, the primary understanding wouldn't have been about biology. It would have been about theology. They understood that miraculous births were a sign of God's direct intervention. Think of Sarah giving birth to Isaac in her old age, or Hannah conceiving Samuel after years of barrenness. These were not understood as biological anomalies, but as powerful demonstrations of God's initiative. God breaking into human history to accomplish His purposes. So, whether or not you accept the biological claim, the theological assertion behind it is absolutely explosive. The world's rescue, its salvation, doesn't come from human power brokers, from dynastic calculations, from carefully arranged marriages, or from political maneuvering. It comes from God's direct, unexpected, and utterly unprecedented initiative. An unplanned pregnancy under imperial occupation in the most humble of circumstances. It proclaims that God is not limited by human conventions or biological norms. He acts in ways that defy our expectations to bring about His divine plan. It's a statement about divine sovereignty and a radical redefinition of where true power lies. We've already established that December 25th is almost certainly not Jesus' actual birthday. So why did early Christians embrace it with such fervor? It wasn't because they thought it was historically accurate. It was because it was profoundly symbolic. Think about the context, the winter solstice. In the northern hemisphere, December 25th falls very close to the darkest, shortest day of the year. For ancient pagan cultures, this was a time of deep anxiety. As the days grew shorter and colder, there was a real fear that the sun, the source of all life and warmth, might just bail on them, that the darkness might win. Festivals like Saturnalia and Sol Invictus were celebrated with feasting, gift-giving, and revelry, in part to encourage the sun's return to usher in the light. Christianity, emerging in this very world, seized upon this powerful cultural moment. Instead of fighting the deeply ingrained pagan calendar, they subverted it. They essentially said, you're right to be concerned about the darkness. You're right to long for the light. But guess what? True light, the light of the world, has just arrived. The winter solstice became the perfect backdrop for claiming that the spiritual light had now returned, permanently dispelling the darkness of sin and death. It's a brilliant example of cultural appropriation, but in a redemptive way. They weren't just adopting a date, they were infusing it with new, revolutionary meaning. Historically inaccurate, yes, but theologically, it was absolutely on point. It's a powerful declaration that God meets humanity not in its moments of triumph or sun-drenched glory, but precisely in its darkest slice of the calendar, in its deepest fears and longest nights, bringing hope and new life. It underscores the message that even in our bleakest moments, the light of Christ can break through, turning pagan despair into Christian joy. The nativity story, as beautiful as it sounds to us now, would have caused significant aftershocks in its original first-century context, particularly for Mary and Joseph. Mary, we're told, stored up all these things and pondered them in her heart. But what about the neighbors? What about the villagers in Nazareth? They remembered the scandal timeline. In that tightly knit honor-shame village culture, a baby born less than 9 months after the wedding would have screamed illegitimacy. It would have been a reputation-ending, utterly shameful event. Even if Joseph publicly claimed the child, whispers would have persisted. In a patriarchal society where a man's honor was paramount and a woman's chastity fiercely guarded, this was devastating. This explains why Jesus, throughout his life, is often labeled Son of Mary. A subtle but potent insult in a world where children were primarily identified by their father's name, especially if the father was of good standing. It suggested he lacked a legitimate paternal lineage, implying scandal. When opponents later spat out, "Is this not the carpenter's son?" it wasn't just a statement of fact. They were weaponizing his perceived humble origins and potentially questionable genealogy to discredit him. The social shame factor is also a compelling explanation for why Mark's gospel, generally considered the earliest of the four, completely skips the birth narrative. Mark starts his story with adult Jesus, already baptized and beginning his public ministry, perhaps for Mark, writing fairly soon after Jesus' life. The birth story was simply too messy, too scandalous, too challenging for a nascent community still grappling with its identity. It was only decades later as eyewitnesses began to fade as the Christian community became more established, and as the theological implications of Jesus' divine origins became more deeply understood, that Matthew and Luke dared to pen their origin stories. They had the theological framework and the distance and time to transform what was initially a source of potential shame into a profound declaration of God as miraculous intervention. It's a reminder that even divine stories unfold within very human, very complex social realities. While archaeology can't definitively prove the birth of Jesus, it absolutely provides fascinating and tangible insights into the plausibility and setting of the nativity narratives. Excavations beneath the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem, for example, have revealed an extensive first-century cave system. This isn't just a random cave. It shows clear signs of having been used for animals. What did they find? Limestone mangers, not unlike the ones mentioned earlier, still visible and matching period design. These natural caves, often connected to homes or used for sheltering livestock, were common in the Judean hills. So, the idea of a family needing to shelter in a cave where animals were kept is not at all far-fetched. It's a historically and archaeologically supported reality of the time. Beyond the cave, archaeology paints a picture of Bethlehem itself. It was indeed a small village, perhaps only 300 to 1,000 souls at its peak in the first century. It wasn't a bustling metropolis, but a quiet, teardrop village, as some describe it. Yet, it wasn't entirely desolate. Evidence suggests it had a thriving olive oil press industry. Hinting at local economic activity beyond mere subsistence farming, pottery shards, coins, and other artifacts confirm continuous habitation right through the Herodian times, demonstrating that Bethlehem was an active, if small, community during the period of Jesus' birth. So, while archaeology won't unearth a birth certificate, it strongly confirms the material culture, an environmental setting described in the Gospels. Livestock, caves used for shelter, limestone mangers, a small but active village. It anchors the story in a verifiable historical landscape, making the ancient narrative feel much more concrete and grounded. It tells us, yes, this kind of place, with these kinds of features, existed exactly where the story says it did. Here's a common misconception. Jesus didn't have a last name, like Smith or Jones. That's a modern convention. In his lifetime, he would have been known as Yeshua, Bar Yosef Yeshua, son of Joseph. The bar means son of. This was standard practice for identification. Being known as son of Joseph was incredibly important. It publicly affirmed his paternity, his lineage, and his legitimacy within the community. It told everyone you belonged. You had a family, you had a place. Christ isn't a surname either. It's a title. It comes from the Greek word Christos, which is the Greek translation of the Hebrew word Mashiach, or Messiah. Both mean anointed one. It's a declaration of his divine role, not a family name. So, when opponents in the Gospels tried to discredit Jesus, they would sometimes weaponize his perceived genealogy. Remember the son of Mary insult. Or, when they scoffed, is this not the carpenter's son? Isn't his mother's name Mary? And aren't his brothers James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas? Aren't all his sisters with us? This wasn't just idle chatter. By emphasizing his humble manual labor background and his known family, they were trying to diminish his authority, to say, who is this guy to claim such things? We know his family. He's nothing special. They were challenging his legitimacy, his claims of divine authority, by tying him to a seemingly ordinary, even scandalous past. But here's where the Gospels, particularly Matthew and Luke, perform an expert-level subversion. They take these potential insults and flip them on their head. Yes, he's the carpenter's kid, but he's also the direct heir of King David. Yes, his birth might have been scandalous in the eyes of some, but it was a miraculous, divine intervention. They transform what could have been a source of shame and weakness into a powerful testament to his true identity, his divine lineage, and his ultimate kingship. It's a masterclass in turning societal expectations on their head to reveal a deeper, more profound truth about who Jesus truly was. While December 25th dominates our Christmas celebrations today, there's another ancient holiday, Epiphany, that often gets overlooked, especially in Western Christianity. And it has a fascinating history that further highlights the early church's debates over dates. Originally, in many Eastern churches, January 6th was the primary celebration. It wasn't just the day for the arrival of the Magi. It commemorated both Jesus' birth and his baptism. It was a day of manifestation, or revelation, the epiphany of Christ to the world, first as an infant and then as the adult Messiah beginning his ministry. When Western Christianity, particularly in Rome, settled on December 25th for Christmas, the Eastern churches maintained January 6th as a distinct festival. Over time, in the West, January 6th evolved to specifically celebrate the arrival of the Magi, marking the revelation of Christ to the Gentiles. This is why in many cultures, particularly in Latin America and parts of Europe, Epiphany is still the traditional day for gift-giving, not December 25th. Think of Three Kings Day traditions. Even today, some Christian traditions, like the Armenian Apostolic Church, still celebrate Jesus' birth on January 6th. Holding on to that ancient practice, it's a living testament to the fact that the early church, far from being a monolithic entity, was a vibrant, diverse, and often disputatious community. They fought over calendars, over theological interpretations, over the precise meaning of sacred events, much like we might debate the latest Tim Hortons cup designs or the proper way to celebrate a holiday today. It reminds us that tradition is a living, evolving thing shaped by history, culture, and theological conviction. After all this historical deconstruction, all these surprising facts that might challenge what you thought you knew, you might be asking, does any of this even matter for my faith? Does understanding the historical backdrop deflate the story? Make it less magical? Less divine? My answer is a resounding no. In fact, it inflates it. It makes the claim even bolder, even more compelling. The idea that God, the creator of the cosmos, slips into a world of Roman census red tape, of crowded guest rooms, of social shame, of ethnic violence, of paranoid kings, and of astronomical phenomena that can be explained by science. That's not a weakness. It's a profound strength. If Jesus emerges from that grit and grime, from that messy, complicated reality, still embodying forgiveness, still offering hope, still proclaiming a kingdom of peace and justice, then maybe his message can handle your Monday morning too. Maybe it can handle the messy realities of your own life, your own struggles, your own doubts. History doesn't undercut theology. It grounds it. It pulls it down from the ethereal, cloud-shrouded realm of abstract ideas and plants it firmly in the sweaty, bloody, politically charged, and utterly human reality of the first century. It shows us a God who doesn't just observe humanity from a distance, but plunges right into its heart, right into its chaos, to meet us exactly where we are. This isn't a story for a pristine, perfect world. It's a story for this world with all its imperfections. And that, I think, makes it all the more powerful and inspiring. So, There you have it. The date's almost certainly wrong. The inn was probably a packed guest room in a family home. The star might have been planetary graffiti or a comet, and the Magi arrived long after the diapers were changed. Herod's massacre might have been small-scale or a powerful theological symbol, and the birth itself was probably a source of scandal in its day. Yet, despite stripping away centuries of sentimental gloss, the pulse of the story remains vibrant and even more powerful. In a backwater village, under imperial occupation, among animals and humble shepherds, Christians believe the divine pitched his tent in human skin. He became one of us. Strip away the Hallmark version, and what you're left with is a grittier, more authentic tale. One that feels less like a cozy lullaby and more like a revolution wearing baby clothes. Next time you see a manger scene, I challenge you, swap the silent night for a crowded, bustling house. Swap the pristine winter snow for the dusty, warm air of a September or October night. Swap the quaint, neatly arranged pageant for empire-level stakes, for social stigma, and for a God who chose the most unexpected, vulnerable, and human way to enter our world. Do that, and you'll glimpse the truly surprising story behind Jesus' birth you never knew. A story that, once understood, changes everything. Still with me after all that? If your brain is buzzing with new insights, then do me a favor. Smash that like button, and tell me below in the comments what surprised you the absolute most. Was it the date mix-up, the guest room twist, or the genius marketing heist of December 25th? I want to hear your thoughts, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss next week's video. We're digging deep into topics that matter, and I'd love for you to be part of this community of truth seekers and believers. Want to support the channel? Join us on Patreon. The link is in the description. Your support helps spread God's word and keep these teachings going. Thank you for standing with us. Until next time, keep seeking, keep growing, and never stop standing on God's word. Thanks for watching.